Hello, and welcome to our very first episode of the Outcry Theatre Podcast. I'm Becca Johnson-Spinos, and I'm the Artistic Director of Outcry Theatre. Every episode of this podcast is going to delve into the artistic process of creating theater. I'm here with the two actors playing Long John Silver in Outcry Youth Theatre's production of Treasure Island. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Harrison. I'm a sophomore at Theo.
Hi, I'm Logan. I'm a junior at Plano Senior.
All right. Thanks for being here for our very first podcast. So first of all, just tell me a little bit about Treasure Island. What's it about?
Well, Treasure Island is about a boy named Jim whose father has recently passed away, and he helps run the inn that he lives at with his mother. And a man comes in named Billy Bones. He's a drunk pirate, and he speaks of a treasure map. Billy Bones gives the treasure map to Jim, and Jim goes on a wild adventure with Squire Trelawney and Dr. Livesey. But then everything changes when he meets Long John Silver.
Right, that's when your character comes in. So tell us a little bit about Long John.
Well, I think the most important thing about Long John is that he basically steps in as Jim's father figure, and teaches him how to be a man on their adventure together.
And I think another thing with it is the constant confliction with Long John of he's trying to be a good guy, but he's a pirate, so it's kind of hard for him to be a bloodthirsty, willing to kill pirate and also trying to be this father figure for Jim, who obviously really looks up to him and needs him to, show him how to, grow up and be a man.
Yeah, and I think he's obviously what we all think of when we think of a pirate. He's quite a famous figure in lore. Has that been intimidating, playing someone that everyone has their ideas about who he is?
Quite.
Oh yes.
It's been a challenge to just grasp the Long John is very theatrical in the way he portrays himself. He's very he's obviously a pirate, so he's very rough and dastardly, but at the same time he's also very refined for a pirate. He speaks of living in mansions, eating fancy foods, having fancy haircuts, and having his own tailor. It's a very large combination of pirates and class that's very hard to portray.
Yeah, I think the most dazzling thing and most intimidating thing about playing Long John is that you have to kind of get down the dichotomy between aggressive, ragey, dirty pirate versus this intellectual, wise old guy, and you gotta get those both down to be convincing, and that's really the hardest part, I think, about playing Long John.
Right, he's got a lot of layers. So, Harrison, this has been a really different kind of role for you than the things that you're normally cast in. You're obviously usually playing a younger role, or we always joke that you are typecast as the best friend of the main character, which you still are sort of playing as Long John Silver, but this is your first kind of older character and father figure. What's that been like for you?
It's been honestly pretty enlightening because after being so used to playing pretty similar parts, not the same part, but relatively similar parts of being the little guy or the weak one, it's really fun and interesting to be able to play the most intimidating guy on stage, to be the guy who will who can shut everyone up because they don't want to mess with him. And they don't want to get on his bad side because they know that he can and is able to kill them. It's a weird feeling of, being able to do something you never really thought you were going to be able to do. But then when you do it, it's just the weirdest feeling of, it's what acting really does. Just, it gives you this feeling that you never really thought you could feel, but then you feel it. I mean, there's no really easy way to explain it other than you have to just do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but you just feel it.
So, Logan, this is like a role that's a little bit more in your wheelhouse. It's the sort of thing you normally play, although there's some differences here. You never played a pirate before, something quite like that, a little bit. What's it been like for you to tackle Long John?
He's in familiar territory for me because I've played a lot of father figures in my life, and I've played a lot of aggressive people in my life and a lot of leadership people roles. But I think the theatrical element to this role has really been sort of something that I've pushed myself to get better at, because he is a very showy person. He likes to glorify everything and make everything sound like wonderful, and I think I've really had a really fun time while I'm working on the character, just kind of going through all the words and just practicing enjoying every single moment of what I'm saying. And I think it's made me very enlightened by doing that, and it's been a very new thing for me. And I really loved this rehearsal process, but mostly because of tackling that aspect of the role.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, for someone unfamiliar with the script, you would think, a character like Long John would speak potentially very gruffly, very tersely, but he, obviously in this particular translation by Ken Ludwig, he knows a lot of Shakespeare. He speaks basically in poetry. I mean, his lines are written like poetry, so he's got a lot of very eloquent things to say, which you would not necessarily expect from a pirate. What have been some of the most challenging aspects, other than the language and the things we've already sort of talked about?
Only having one leg.
Yeah, definitely.
We have to walk around, do basically everything we would normally do on stage, physicality-wise, dancing-wise, fighting-wise, with a crutch and a leg that we cannot unstraighten. It's been a challenge. It was a thing that I was really scared about going into this process, but now that we're nearing the end of it, it's kind of become fluent, per se, because we're just so used to it at this point that we can just basically, like, we're not even doing it. It's who we are now. It's just one leg, but that's definitely been the hardest part.
It was really weird at first, especially with the crutch. I think now at this point, it's like second nature to us. And whenever I'm on stage now, no matter where I am, if I'm at Outcry or at school, I always start by straightening my leg. And it's been second nature to me to just walk around like that now.
Okay, what's been the most fun part about playing this part?
Everything. I mean, maybe it's just me because I've never done anything like this before, but being Long John, being this pirate who's also super refined and class and taste, it's just the most fun thing ever, because I get to just talk down to everybody and everyone listens to me. I get to speak in Shakespeare, and being the father figure and not being the guy who needs the father figure, it's just so much fun. Just everything about Long John is fun. The way he talks, the way he moves, the way he fights, the things he speaks of and the way he speaks of them, it's just awesome.
I think the most fun part for me was also, as I said before, the most challenging part, which is the theatrical aspect of the character. I definitely think just cherishing every word that I say and just making it as theatrical as possible it's a joy to do on stage. It truly is. And I also think, fighting is always fun, especially since we have a lot of fighting, especially in the second act. And the dancing is really fun, and it's always a joy for me to get on stage and play guitar and sing, as I've done in the past a lot. It's been one of the most fun roles I've ever had, I think.
So as you guys have mentioned, you guys do a lot of fighting. Can you talk a little bit about all the fights in the show and what that's been like and how big they are and epic and all of that.
Well, you're correct. They are pretty epic. We have a total of 4 fights.
Yeah.
And one of them is with the enemy captain, Smollett. And that one's pretty fun because our sword gets knocked out, and our only weapon we have is our crutch. And boy, is that a weapon. And then we have fights with a man named George Mary. And then we even have a fight with our good friend Jim later in the show, which is very fun and very amusing. It's also very different going back to the leg because we have to focus on all the movement we can't do because of the leg. So we have to kind of show that we're still able to do these things without one of our legs. And that kind of shifts it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun fights for me is the gym fight, because most of the time we're acting like, it's just super easy and we're not, it doesn't take any effort for us. I think definitely the most fun fight is with Smollett, because we can use that crutch like no one's business, and I really think that's just such a fun component of getting to fight someone, not just using a sword, just using a crutch, this giant hunk of wood, I just think that's just so incredibly fun.
And that fight is in the midst of like our big fight where literally every single cast member is on stage fighting. And I feel like that must be pretty epic just to be in the midst of everyone moving around.
It
and
is.
It being this giant fight.
Yeah.
It's a bit chaotic at times, but I'm sure when people watch it, it's going to be pretty amazing because there's people fighting everywhere, and then there's slow motion sequences, and then everyone does it, and then people just do it, and it looks amazing. But it's definitely a challenge at times to make sure you don't hit people. But it's very fun. It's definitely one of my favorite fights that we've done ever.
You can tell there's a lot of intensity behind every move, especially with the Smollett Silver fight. There's a lot of effort behind, all the people fighting, and they're all going at it as hard as they can.
Yeah. And there's a lot of anger behind that,
There's
too.
a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger.
A lot of anger and, hate between those two.
Yeah, Smollett, we didn't really mention who Smollett is. Smollett's the captain of the ship that Long John basically attempts to overthrow so that he can get the treasure. Talk to me a little bit about the musical elements that we're incorporating in the show and what that's been like.
Well, we decided to have a couple classic sea shanties mixed into the first act of the show. One of them is kind of more, not happy, but less angry and more melancholy. And then there's another one where we're just raging on stage while singing and playing, and we are just going at it. And I think it does a good job at showing Long John's both sides.
Basically, our first entrance in the show is us coming out and playing this song while we're looking at the ship for the first time, and it almost shows the majestic side of Long John, almost. And then at the end of the scene, you see kind of the sinister side of Long John, and then it follows Long John to the ship where he's actually on the ship, and then he plays this angry song basically about losing his leg. And then at the top of Act 2, we play the song that isn't really a sea shanty. It's
not.
But it's very much an appropriate Long John song about, he's basically talking about how even if, even in the midst of dying, everything's going to be okay in the end. And I think that's a very, very important aspect of how Long John looks at life in general.
Okay, so I think one last thing about Long John. I think we have to talk about his relationship with Jim and how complicated that is, and how important that is to his whole being.
Well, the Long John and Jim relationship is a very convoluted and mixed relationship. It it's very hard to portray at times because Long John definitely cares about Jim, and he shows it. And I think there's always this little thing in Jim that Jim knows that Long John cares, but some of the things that Long John does just are unforgivable at times. And so there's a lot of father figureness in it, and then there's a lot of hate in it. There's a lot of pain and anger and sadness in the relationship. But I think it does a very good job I think Long John is honestly one of the most perfect father figures that you could ever ask for. While he is a pirate, which some would not call the best thing, he shows Jim after his father's death how to live.
Yeah, he does get Jim to kind of appreciate the simple things in life and to appreciate how they're actually, some of the best things you can do. On the flip side of the coin, Long John's a pirate, and Jim just can't get past that fact, and really neither can Long John, because he has this ultimate plan to get the treasure that he really, really believes is rightfully his. Neither one can really get past those two things. I think they both care about each other a lot. They both know what they want, though, in the end, too.
Yeah. And I think another one of the very interesting things about the process of this show was doing it with our Jims. So my Jim, who's named Ben, we are already really good friends, and it's just interesting to see the buddy moments we have in the scenes where I'm teaching him something, and he just really seems to be into it and just very enlightened by it. And then 20 minutes later, I am revealing that I'm a pirate, and he's just shocked. You can see it on him that he's shocked, and he's just terrified by this idea that this guy he looked up to is a pirate, and he's this evil guy who's trying to just get treasure for himself. And I think that's one of the most interesting parts of the show is what it does to Jim, because Jim looks up to him so much for the longest time, and then it's gone in an instant. All the things that he believed are just gone. And it's very interesting to see how Jim reacts to this.
I think working with Will, who is my Jim, has been an incredible experience for me. It's been very Long John-esque for me to watch him grow through this process and watch him learn, go through his good times and his numerous bad times. I think we work really well together, and I really like working with him.
Yeah, I think you guys have really great Jims. Harrison is actually in a situation where his Jim is actually older than him, which is a really weird thing.
It was weird for about the first month, but then it's just you gotta move past it, and you just gotta do it. It's what you're here for. You're here to move past those things.
Yeah, I mean, when we're here to play make believe, which is basically what we spend our time doing, then you just have to. Yeah, I mean,
I'm playing a pirate in 1775. We can look past him being older than me.
So, what do you think makes our production of this story unique?
I think what is going to set our production apart from, every other Treasure Island production is I think we're going to portray it in a very, very unique way. And I think it's going to be in a way where you can just feel all the love and the passion from every single cast member. And I feel like you can feel that in the room when you're rehearsing. I can feel every ounce of dedication coming from, everyone in the cast. And I think the audience will be able to feel that too. And it's going to be great.
So what can people expect to see when they come see our production of Treasure Island?
Adventure, action, fights, lots of fights, some music, death, lots of death. But I think most of all is you come to see the journey of Jim. I think that's the main reason that you would want to see this, because the journey of Jim is truly kind of inspiring. Because this boy had basically nothing. His father was dead. He was in an inn with his mom working. And then everything changed. He just goes on this amazing adventure that you could only dream of. And just everything just works out in the end. It's amazing.
It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry a little bit. Make you want to be a pirate and go on sea and have adventures, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You'll definitely want to be a pirate after seeing it.
I want to be a pirate.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you guys so much for doing this with me, for being here, for being my first guest.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you for having us.
Fun.
Treasure Island runs January 26th through February 11th at the Addison Theater Center Studio Theater. Tickets are on sale now at the Outcry Theater website. Thank you so much for joining us for our debut episode of the Outcry Theatre Podcast. This podcast has been produced by me, Becca Johnson-Spinos, and edited by Jason Johnson-Spinos. For more information about this production and Outcry Theatre, you can find us on Facebook or at our website, outcrytheatre.com. That's theater with an R-E. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your theater-loving friends.